How I learned about Tekken Josie early in 2023. The foundation for my Josie theory spans as far back as December 16th, 2022, featuring Josie, Chloe, and Claudio that were all represented within my Tekken 7 marketing case study. Afterwards, my Kazuya trailer and Josie billboard theory debuted on February 22nd, 2023. Going past that, you'll see my Josie theory during Jin's trailer release, February 28th, 2023. On that same day, in the evening, Michael Murray's quote tweet response was also presented on Jin's trailer. To also confirm my Easter egg tweet, Michael Murray, throughout the earlier portions of these Tekken 8 character trailers, would always share his thoughts on the newer features and additions presented from the footage. Also always ending his tweets with a winking face to dignify Easter eggs or teasers that were and still are presented throughout the gameplay footage in Tekken 8. With that said, Jin's trailer was the first to start this trend if you read both of our respective tweets. This happened due to Tekken Twitter's culture being toxic towards my Josie idea for most of that day, and I treated Murray's post as speculation and theory because that's what that was to me. Josie was DLC if you refer to the August 2023 EVO base roster leak story. My Josie theory was for the base cast, and I later transitioned to DLC without using the EVO story through research, communication with my fans, and natural deductions if you watched my videos. The next wave of videos that debuted afterwards was my Josie billboard update featuring both Claudio and Leroy, my reaction to Azucena's debut for Tekken 8, and afterwards me making that natural transition from Josie being presented within the base roster to DLC without the use of the EVO story that was rampant on the internet at the time. Here's the August EVO leak in context. Michael Murray tried to gaslight the fandom on Twitter, yet the cast ended up being 100% accurate. And also keep in mind from that EVO story that English wasn't the leaker's first language. My Josie billboard theory features both Azucena and the Anna update that debuted on November 4th, 2023. KH Sun commented on that video at 7:44 a.m. EST. At the same moment, Harada, with no context, said, "Yeah," on Twitter. I woke up 1 hour later and responded to both. Keep in mind that the Tekken team regularly gaslights the community in a condescending tone and also stalks social media. Here you'll see Harada's tweet, the burner, and my tweet response, with the time and date. Yuriko Tiger, official Tekken model for Bandai Namco, and model for Josie's Tekken 7 vanilla marketing campaign, also responded to Harada by saying, "The power of the tiger," or the tiger's power. Said events from Tekken 7 also featured Jin and Double Jin in that same day. After that event, my Josie 2024 YouTube journey started receiving a slow trend or theme of burner account comments that all either shared homogenized initials, names, or Spanish last names to maintain recognizability from the obvious Harada burner account. It was obvious that the Tekken team originally assumed that I leaked Josie without watching my other theory videos and chose to gaslight me. Gaslighting in December 2023 during the BN Asia L-Felt Guilty Gear Strive leak discourse. Most Tekken fans on X don't know about my platform or Josie reputation within the community. Therefore, Harada had creative freedom to make posts like this. Babality is a Mortal Kombat gimmick that Harada used to dignify the fact that he watched my Anna and Josie video on YouTube. Josie's Tekken 7 criticism, or at least one of the many, was that she was a crybaby as expressed for nearly a decade through Tekken 7's lifespan. The 2024 events. January 8th, 2024 was when Josie's DLC image was leaked online, even though it was fake, as we got Eddie as our first DLC character. We had Anna represent our spring category for Season 2, so I ended up being wrong anyways. My personal DLC theory was thinking of spring, and I later made that transition to summer. This ended up being Lydia back in Season 1. I didn't see her dropping at EVO Vegas, and winter was optional at the time since I was thinking of either Josie or Falcon, but that was before we all realized that Harada lied in our faces about no guest characters in Season 1, and I would have committed to Falcon had the team not gotten that character leaked by the fandom alongside Marduk. I personally had Josie and Falcon Ram within the winter category for the longest time, but I feel like for the sake of variety, it'd be better to have 2 males, 2 females for your first season. And also given the fact that there's been a lot of conversation regarding this character, I think they'd want to be a bit unpredictable, given the topic of leaks in general. At the time of the fake Josie leak, I was shocked, assumed the worst, and formally apologized to Michael Murray on January 9th to clear any misconceptions, as the entirety of my Josie videos, comments, and posts were through deductions, research, and interacted with my YouTube community. As you'll see from the Harada burner account, it features 2 likes on my first comment. I only had 1 at the time until I made that DM to Michael Murray. After that DM was shared on January 9th, that's when Michael Murray did damage control 1 hour later. February 2nd and February 3rd of 2024 featured Michael Murray sharing free yet subtle promotional Josie teaser content with Reina that I did not ask for, but gained since I kept my mouth shut and despite my critical base story mode review. To summarize my Josie theory for these images in context, Josie was represented as an Easter egg in Leroy's Tekken-themed New York stage. Her canon fashion career from Tekken 7 that was never explored was represented through a debut image that only got updated details with each base character trailer. Subtle is a key word since both sides profit from this communication. Here's the definition of the crow in Japanese culture. Here's the purpose of the color gold in the Philippines. This part was a bit iffy as I picked yellow here. Gold represents beauty and identity, which makes sense for Josie's character. My old idea was to find possible Jose Rizal references, so my interpretation is probably wrong if you're well versed with Filipino history. Josie's visual, mechanical, and verbal design is sensitive to all this if you refer to Tekken 7's 9-year lifespan. This is now the Evo Vegas countdown in 2024. The base game, Eddie, and Lydia were out by this point, and I had no theory that shared that Josie would be in Vegas because I didn't think so. By this point, I decided to personally take a break from the theory, so I didn't dignify her whatsoever for Evo, because we got Heihachi, and that was very unexpected. February was also promoting Evo's tournament lineup, and by this point, the team was still aware of my presence. Following their core Evo details, they shared 2 nuggets of information for fun. The fact that my theory reached them, and a fun tease that my hopes would come true in the future. Heihachi was revealed despite Harada baiting the community into thinking that he was dead, releasing a bad, stagnant, immature DLC story in October 2024, and it was by this point that I was personally tired of Tekken 8. Folks who know me on Twitter and YouTube know that my Year 1 Tekken 8 experience was barely playable or accessible on Steam, and that I've been very vocal about the Tekken team's shady corporate practices, their communication, manners, and clear internal and external flaws from Tekken 7 that got worse in Tekken 8. My Tekken origins will be presented here, but be aware of the fact that I was outspoken about Tekken 7 as well during the game's late lifespan and optimistic about Tekken 8. I am also an advocate for competent storytelling in fighting games, and have shared plenty of posts and videos to express this. I also featured a wide catalog of valuable characters, villains, and established writers in pop culture and narrative arcs that would be beneficial to the Tekken team's records for future attempts on my X and YouTube platforms. I did this after my base story review, my pre-Heihachi DLC story release, and after the DLC story expansion. And yes, I featured Tough Love in the official story reviews. No excuses for this new story since your characters are 30 years old. Tekken 7's story was unclear with a low budget. Tekken 6 was available to effectively utilize for Tekken 8, yet you danced around it, and I detailed why that was fundamentally a bad move for Tekken 8's story. Tekken 8 also left a promising impression in its demo footage. There was a high budget too, but that was spent on the visuals and flash, with small crumbs on the writing to back it up. Once I shared this post below to notify the Tekken team of my base story writing critique, I think it was fair to say that things were already going downhill after they watched my video. The request for the community's base story feedback. Here are my tweets to them. Harada also asked for everyone's feedback on the music, visuals, and base game's narrative direction. And here's my second one from January 31st. Harada's alternative burner for this. I got this message later after I tweeted Murray, Harada, and the main Tekken account on the 31st. The base story review video was also launched on the 31st and released at 10:12 p.m. on my X post. Our conversation is here. Keep in mind that Harada has always been very self-conscious about Tekken 4's development history and the content that follows. I did talk about Tekken's narrative history before starting my review. Call my comment and my first video exaggerations, but Heihachi's canon DLC story update doubled down on the lack of focus for the writing. Contrast that with how I found Eddie promising because they implemented my feedback and Lydia's portion was also considered to be passable by me. Not good, but passable. If Eddie was in the base game and they featured his writing early on, that would have supported the opening for the New York section for Jin's arc. And I already found the New York debate between Kazuya and Jin really good. 21st, 2024, my post is where I kept Harada anonymous to express the accuracy of my base story review. Heihachi's Evo reveal was out by this point, and I reacted and posted on both my YouTube and X. By this point, I was not feeling Tekken 8 as a packaged product, and this was near the end of 2024, past my DLC story review. I made numerous posts throughout my Twitter and YouTube posts to articulate the massive mismanagement that is now starting to be realized by the greater community. In 2025, and out of my personal actions, with zero dev request or demand, I tried to educate both my community and the Tekken developers who by this point were actively observing my YouTube posts. I milked my personal YouTube posts through my Josie fan content since early March 2023. Josie was an active focus character on my YouTube platform, as I featured not only informative guides, but I later got my community tab in March 2023 to make fan content, featuring my and the Tekken community's efforts for positive and informative reach. I diversified my YouTube Josie content by writing blog posts later on. And if you refer to the document, you'll find an extra 2 tab for additional Harada stuff. So how did I use my community tab? I actively shared my thoughts on Tekken 8 through blog posts during and after the game's countdown. Here, I looked at successful writers, underrated writers, characters, and media that I resonated with, which all featured a strong grasp of overarching storytelling, episodic storytelling, ambitious attempts to challenge the audiences, and fictional characters, and observed the immortalized impression that people would resonate with if they were already aware of what the content was. So my January 10th post featured The Tensionaire, which was a Canadian series with a strong grasp of long-form storytelling, and Yu-Gi-Oh's narrative approach with Duel Links. January 17th was when I looked over the history of Batman Beyond and shared how it was a corporate-requested yet successful concept. Here, on January 24th, was when I featured Paul Dini and Dwayne McDuffie, going over their respective resumes and what they were famous for, the writing styles, and also the shows and movies that they represented as well within pop culture. January 31st was when I looked at Stan Berkowitz and his credentials. February 14th was when I featured Alan Brunette's credentials. I only pushed this so far back because I was sick at the time. Well, this is about to get dark. February 21st, 2011 was when Dwayne McDuffie passed away due to his heart. His birthday was on the 20th of February. For February 2025, I decided to show my respect by watching and reviewing his movie lineup to later post my thoughts on his work. So the first movie that I looked at was Justice League Crisis on Two Earths. The second movie that I featured was Justice League Doom. Both of these reviews launched on February 22nd. Now for my All-Star Superman movie review, I launched this on February 25th of 2025. So by the time of February, my attention was focused on making Dragon Ball content and educating my community and the Tekken developers, who by this point didn't need to keep tabs on me, but they did because I was very opinionated about Tekken 8 back in 2024. I wrote my scathing first anniversary reflection on January 27th of this year, and I made educational and informative content, and I was easily the most active Josie creator within 2023 to 2024, with future information that they unnecessarily gave me on multiple occasions. Before February 20th, I had already started my writer post. I shared my Twitter and YouTube post thoughts on the flawed consumer experiences and practices of Tekken 7 and 8 and reposted Twitter comments that were also outspoken and shared valid commentary because I was fed up with the package like everyone else. I shared plenty of my valid reflective feedback for Tekken 8 past this Twitter timeframe, but stopped to commit to my writer-focused posts and Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 2 content. So here's another valid repost that I showcased in March. Dwayne McDuffie's passing anniversary was the 21st, and the 22nd was when I launched my first review post. The second review post was featured on the 25th in the afternoon at 5 p.m. This was my 7th reflective post by this point as well. What made Dwayne McDuffie so significant as a writer was his ability to make his characters feel like human beings, and he had always advocated for diversity within the media as an African American. He was the creator of the Milestone universe, and the creator of characters like Static, Icon, Rocket, etc. He was the co-writer of the Static Shock TV show in the 2000s, and was a story editor and future producer of the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited TV series in the 2000s. He also wrote Ben 10, Alien Force, and Ultimate Alien as well. And for those who are still out of the loop for who Dwayne McDuffie is, here are 2 videos that you can easily refer to right now if you need more context. Harada, by this point, had already watched my opinionated Tekken 8 videos pre- and post-release, read my detailed YouTube and X posts that disagreed with Tekken 8 on numerous avenues. I also posted both on and off of his, Murray's, Nakatsu's, and Tekken's Twitter pages, in addition to my catalog of Joe's videos and active posts, some of which were positive and premature DLC knowledge. That includes the plethora of media stories and writer-focused content in 2025 that was intended for educational purposes and positive content, created for my fans and their team. Once again, this was my decision with 0 dev requests. Thursday, February 25th, 2025, at 7:58 p.m. EST, was when Harada was engaging what seemed to be a fun ongoing Tekken lore discussion. This conversation started at 7:47 p.m. EST. With his fans regarding Anna, Harada then shamefully referenced both Dwayne McDuffie's passing if you read my Superman Reflection opening, and my efforts in gathering these reflective YouTube posts in a falsely positive tone to boost his image as a writer. He also knew that his active Tekken developer to Twitter culture was unaware of my YouTube Josie Theory reputation and my support towards these writers, which meant he had creative freedom to say this with no fear or inquiry. And if this was meant to be a positive reference, it would have been better to have given your community a new piece of information that's insightful, respectful, and references Dwayne's efforts and impact. Just being aware and sharing the very idea of knowing that there were superior writers in the world who have accomplished more than you and that you could learn from does enough to make you look humble without throwing any shade. Now keep in mind that Harada actively lies, condescends, and gaslights the community. And he did this to me since my Anna and Josie video in November. Also keep in mind with what Harada is saying because it's absolutely a load of Tekken 8 already has a main website that features all the character bios that only get updated for DLC characters. Older main stories are expected to appear, a weird disconnected summary of the base story, and doesn't even have a DLC story summary as a subsection after 7 months of that updated canon story's release. That makes no sense here if you look at this Harada statement and remember that Heihachi was brought back because fans and developers missed him and was considered a controversial yet big deal if we look at the different social media marketing tactics before both this and this canon DLC story's release. The joke of Harada lying, the very idea of a DLC story expansion, and the best headcanon story from the Twitter fandom. This was quietly dismissed due to another Tekken 8 accident related to the new content. Your statement is distorted if you haven't already completed what's in front of you regarding this currently outdated canon website info, and how that's supposed to be updated to actively inform your community about this main focus title, household character, and the significance of this story expansion. Late updates for your story DLC means that you didn't care enough to support your lore and one of your most beloved characters who holds more weight than Anna in this context. We also already know that Tekken has a cookie-cutter narrative and gets memed and accepted for its lost direction by most of the fandom, with characters that have barely shown signs of a careful evolution. The DLC story reception confirms this as well. The greater community and I have shared our insightful feedback for years, Tekken 7 being in the social media age, alongside older Tekken fans being able to give insight to the vast number of new or uninformed fans like myself back in Tekken 7. Tekken 7's story direction was lost and rightfully criticized by the fandom for years regarding Heihachi's story and the additional main story and side character content that was there. Yet we still get mocked and crapped on by the developers. Now, 2 hours later, I was shocked by this immature and shallow action, and while I was enraged, I decided to not make a ruckus on social media, because it's hard to really detail stuff like this when you don't have an army of receipts to back up your information. Now, here's my responsive YouTube post on February 26th. What's also funny here is that this post and my Superman reflection piece both received 2 likes respectively the day after the 26th. This was the only YouTube community post that featured a hashtag Tekken within the month of February as well. I didn't talk about Tekken's characters through February, and at most I only made one venting tweet on February 19th to a SNK City of the Wolves post. The latest was January 30th, where I shared my criticisms on a MoonSault Slayer tweet. Now, originally, I was looking to branch out and feature more talented writers and establish shows and movies to further inform my fans and the developers because I thought it was a fun experience. Instead, I posted this on February 27th because the Tekken team do not respect their fans, the deceased, the efforts of legends who have accomplished more in the world of entertainment and storytelling, and supported and connected with numerous real-world communities in progressive ways, and meanwhile, Tekken hasn't beaten the bad character writing and world-building allegations for decades. I teased some of this on my Twitter for months because I had to get it off my chest. No way that you can be so dismissive, which shows how uneducated you are about a person's contributions, intelligence, and efforts to make their voices heard and have others feel seen, considering how much Dwayne McDuffie did for the Black community in the world of comics and television. I lived and breathed superhero culture and television as a kid, and years later, I can still reflect on the efforts of these writers who contributed to shaping positive and insightful memories. Dwayne McDuffie still gets supported every year. Eris's 2020 post was right in how these developers are oblivious to the fact that we, as a community, hard carry their games, and meanwhile, they still choose to condescend because they think they're above it all and profit from a community's ignorance, regardless of the established Josie knowledge that they unnecessarily have given me on numerous accounts. I was excited about the Tekken 8 pre-release and the unknown regarding their base roster and the DLC roster. These were developers got their entire base cast leaked during an EVO event, lied about it, and summoned a realistic Josie leak and or rumor that happened during said EVO event, and I never dignified that. They unnecessarily gave me Josie-themed information and teasers on countless occasions since February 28, 2023 without any personal request from me, pre-existing connections, or written pieces from them to lay down boundaries of what was or wasn't allowed of me that they suggested. I morally kept my mouth shut and kept my YouTube channel intact since I wasn't looking for unnecessary drama through their November 5th misunderstandings, and already embraced the persona of being an analyst, a theorist, and a strategist as far as my Tekken 7 Josie guides. The abuse from the Tekken fandom for just saying the name Josie wasn't it at all. The abusive consumer-to-developer relationship that I eventually stopped tolerating wasn't it since late Tekken 7, and you can see where that got us despite people and the developers gaslighting us into thinking and saying otherwise. I remember watching late Tekken 7 vanilla matches on YouTube for the first time and watching Eris as far as 2016, experiencing Tekken culture, watching Tekken Tag 2 matches on YouTube, and also watching all of Tekken 7 FR's exposure through Eris, in addition to watching Main Man and Arsenal T's arcade Tekken 7 experiences. Watching it later being in tourneys. I love my fans, my YouTube community, and the people who believed in this theory and me as a player. My Filipino fans showed their support, and I'm happy that I exposed myself to a different culture for perspective. However, I refuse to pay off any details or content of Josie's future showcase with a fun reaction because clearly these developers would rather be rude to accomplished, self-made writers who contributed to numerous diverse communities and educated numerous generations through various forms of literature, all for the sake of positive PR that didn't age gracefully given how Tekken 8 only decayed even further and already had escalating criticisms before that. Tekken was already a part of my life as a kid, but to gaslight yourself into thinking that you have a God-given right to condescend to the deceased to make yourself look good for superficial reasons is filthy and only serves to show the ever-growing detail in how abusive, manipulative, and condescending you present yourself to be towards a big portion of your fandom. And in case anyone says that I'm not formal to Harada and I don't try to be positive to the person whatsoever, I want you to refer to all of these. In addition to this, here are some 2024 character pieces that I wrote on both my X and YouTube posts. Shire Hall, here's a character analysis from Justice League. Formal yet critical suggestions to the Tekken team for the base story that I wrote on my Twitter. Here's a Tombstone character analysis featuring the show Spectacular Spider-Man. Here's Jade and Yuki's Season 3 and 4 character arc that you can absolutely refer to. On the topic of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, you also have Merrick and Yami Merrick that you can refer to. Well, with that being said, that was a lot to take in.